I want to take a moment and thank our show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Sutmeyer Law Firm, and NativePath Supplements. These are companies we personally use and trust. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic or Sutmeyer Law Firm. And not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's COMO 15 at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com and receive 15% off all of your orders. Your support to our show sponsors assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope you all enjoy. All right, welcome to the Co-Movement Gym podcast, where we inspire people to move and live courageously. It's Andy and I chilling in the studio today. There's an article recently that I sent you, Andy.
Yeah, very interesting.
Very interesting. And I wanted to do, it was so important to me that I wanted to do a podcast episode on it. And so there was a study done in Florida that found widespread traces of 58 medications.
Yeah, pharmaceutical medications.
Yep, heart drugs, opioids, antidepressants, and antifungals in fish.
Yeah, yep.
In their system.
And in other marine life too. Like they studied fish first,
yep,
but then they were finding it in like other animals that live in the ocean.
Yeah, yep. So they found it in bone, the study was in bonefish,
right?
Which we don't eat that. But the fish that we do eat, that eat bonefish, they tested positive for all of these.
Right.
And this was in Florida. Like I said, the study was in Florida. And so with this bonefish, the populations have fallen by more than 50% over 4 decades.
Yeah, it's having a massive impact on marine life in general.
Yes. And they did this study, this fish ecologist, associate professor at Florida International University, FIU. And the reason that the populations have dropped so much, they had deemed was because of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. Yep.
And so of the 93 bonefish that they sampled, all tested positive, all of them, for at least one pharmaceutical, including, like I said, heart medications, opioids, antifungals, and antidepressants. 56% of fish researchers detected pharmaceutical quantities at levels above which we expect negative effects, so higher. And one bonefish sampled in Key West tested positive for 17 pharmaceuticals in the system. Yep. 8 of them were antidepressants. Yep. And they were up to 300 times above the human therapeutic level in this fish. Not just the one fish. Again, there's 93, and all of them tested for some level of drugs in their system.
Yeah. So they're testing positive for a level that would affect a human. I mean, you can only imagine what that does to a 5-pound fish or
for
2-pound fish or however big these things are.
Exactly. And I go to Florida a few times a year, and we have
clients who go there and fish.
Yeah. And it's like, you always see wild caught, and it's just like, you're thinking, this is natural, whatever. But now I'm starting to question a lot of this. And my buddy, AC, he's a fly fishing guide. And he sent me a message a few months ago that said the only clean fish left in the U.S.
is
Alaskan salmon. Yeah. The only one, even the Adirondack fish.
All we're eating now. I mean, you made that change like a year or two ago.
It's the only fish that I eat, unless I'm splurging on vacation, maybe here or there.
Right.
But yeah, Alaskan wild caught salmon is the only fish.
I go to the grocery store and I get wild Alaskan sockeye salmon.
Yeah. So for people listening, if you eat fish, this is probably an interesting study. I want to keep moving on. So why are these fish loaded with drugs? Why do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into it, but as far as like the surface level stuff, it's going to be because of the wastewater, all the runoff from the medications that we put down the toilet or down the sink, which is a big problem. And just in manufacturing the medications as well, I think there's a lot of waste runoff there as well.
Yes. The sewage spills, discharge of treated wastewater into the ocean, and malfunctioning septic tanks. Okay.
Yeah.
So like when I visit Florida, let's say Ponce Inlet, it's a long strip, it's a peninsula, and you have hundreds of homes, all with septic tanks going somewhere. The ocean's on both sides. And I think to myself, like, how efficient are these systems? And it's, I guess we could say potentially not that efficient, or they're very outdated, right?
Well, the problem is too, not just the septic systems, but like with just like the systems that filter water out of the manufacturing plants that produce these and all that stuff. Some of them are designed with like filtration systems, but they're not filtration systems that are designed to filter out pharmaceutical medications. Then they get out other pollutants, because we do have like kind of some green policies in the US that require them to have a certain level of filtration, but they need to update to the point where they can actually filter out these pharmaceutical medications, because that's something that's been slipping through that for decades no one thought anything about, and thought it was no big deal, never even considered it. And now we're realizing that we're just flooding the oceans with all of our pharmaceuticals, and none of the filtration systems filter out any of that stuff. We're capable of it. They can make filtration systems that do, but they need to update, I mean, all of these everywhere where this water is coming from.
Think about like the time frame to update the infrastructure and the millions of systems. The question I think about a lot is like, in that time frame to update that, how much more unreversible damage are we going to cause, right? This was one study with one species of fish in one state, right? We're not talking the Gulf of Mexico or the Northeast or off California, you know.
And like a lot of this is in freshwater as well, because a lot of these things are, some of these medications are coming from far inland, and they're just being dumped into our rivers and stuff, which make their way into our lakes and so on. And they eventually get to the ocean, where this particular study was conducted. But it's all of our waters have this problem, whether it's freshwater inland or the marine stuff.
So it's not just coastal, it's all over. There was this
and
article.
I'm sure it's global too, because it's not like all the other countries in the world.
Exactly. We're bashing the U.S., but all the other countries, I'm sure it could be even worse, right? There's a sewage spill here. They said in 2020, it was 212 million gallons of sewage spilled in Fort Lauderdale's waterways. That was just like, oops, that's an accident, right? But 212 million gallons of...
Was that a one-time incident, or was that like per year?
No, this says it's I think this was it was an accident or some kind of, no, this was an accident, it was a spill. So it says, though most contamination is screened out through sewage treatment plants, it's very hard to remove some of these pharmaceuticals from the water. Like you said, we just haven't updated far enough with this.
And once they're in there, which a lot of these are, because we've been doing this for decades, I don't know how long it takes to clean the oceans from that.
I know.
You know, even if we were to update our filtration systems tomorrow and we're no longer dumping more in. I mean, how long are these things just floating around in the ocean for the next 20 years?
Almost like a half-life, right? Ish, like how, or is that the wrong term? Like how long does it?
No, because the half-life has to do with how long it takes your body to metabolize it and process it.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, that's why, for example, a medication that has like, let's say a 12-hour half-life, that's once you ingest it, but it can still sit in your medicine cabinet and be potent for 2 years.
That's true. So we could be looking at hundreds of years with the residual, with this sitting.
Possibly.
Wow. Okay. The FIU study went on to say further evidence is needed to make urgent changes and to upgrade our infrastructure to continue living in this region and protecting our economic and environmental interests. Okay. The problem is not limited to Florida. Experts say there is an urgent need to improve wastewater infrastructure globally, that you just touched on, and to remove pharmaceuticals before they reach the ocean. There's a few things I want to get into here. We talked about this before when we initially read this, but this article references exploring greener pharmaceuticals.
So not fixing the filtration problem or anything, but just making the pharmaceuticals greener, possibly more biodegradable or something, so that they have less of an effect on the environment.
Yes, which who knows what that looks like, right? Because that's a guessing game, right?
Right.
Greener, maybe, sure, but then how does it affect fish and reproduction and our systems when we eat the fish or swim in the water?
And the sad thing about that approach to me is we have this problem of massive overuse of medications in this country, and we're dumping them into the oceans. And we say, how do we fix this? Let's just make all these medications greener so that we can continue to use the massive amounts of medications that we do and continue to dump them in the ocean.
Yes. That was the next point. And so the article, and I didn't know this, it says the average American takes 12 prescriptions a year. It says nearly 5 billion medications are prescribed annually in the US alone. So 330 million, some people, but that's including kids and whatnot, right? Yep. But like on average, 12 prescriptions per person a year. And so if we back way up and not look at this as surface level to say, let's fix the septic tanks and this and that, I don't know, like maybe we should make it a goal of like, let's get down to 2 prescriptions a year, 3.
Right.
And then who cares? We don't need to necessarily address as quickly or as aggressively the infrastructure to get rid of these, drugs because we're healthier. That's what I thought this whole article missed. They're talking about greener prescriptions, and then they were saying how much we're taking, but no one really said like, maybe we should just be healthier America, you know?
Actually, I think there was even a quote in there somewhere. Right on the front page here. They say, we cannot ban these substances because we need them, but we could push for greener alternatives. We should be focusing on trying to get our country to the place where we don't need these medications. Like they take it as a given that we just need these substances. We need these pharmaceuticals. They're critical. So how do we change our filtration systems or make them greener or something so we can continue to take them? When to me, the real problem is, why are we so sick that we need to take all these medications? If we just became a healthier country and got off all these medications, the problem is solved.
Our fish wouldn't be on drugs.
Not to mention, can you imagine the economic change there where, right now, the idea of fixing all the filtration systems or whatever, like that would be a multi-billion-dollar, probably $1 trillion move, right?
Yep. In many, many years.
Yes. Not to mention how much poor health costs, and healthcare costs and all that kind of thing. If everyone just got healthier, we wouldn't need to fix all that stuff. So we save all that money, and we save all the money from sick people. I mean, if you have a healthier country, you save so much money.
And this was not a surprise to me, but and we've seen this for years now, like we really aren't focused on creating a healthier America, right? We say we are, and there's these different like projects and this and that, but in reality, right, we're not in many ways. And this is a clear example of that. The obvious thing to someone with very little education would think to say, well, let's just not take 12 prescriptions a year and get healthier through a whole foods incentive or like subsidizing vegetables or cutting sugar, intake. But there's none of that, and I don't know what that's going to take to switch that, but the thing that's not going to solve this problem is better septic systems. I think it goes way beyond that, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it says researchers also studied 125. This was very interesting. 125 animals that the bonefish that they initially tested prey on. And it included shrimp, crabs, and small fish. Each contained on average 11 pharmaceutical contaminants. So what does that say? 2 things: that they're getting the drugs from the bonefish or vice versa, right? They're passing through, but those animals, those fish are also swimming in the same water. So they're getting contaminated too. They had 11 on average in them. And we eat that, right? Crab, shrimp, like this is stuff now drug, because some people in the beginning would say, well, we don't even consume bonefish, what's that matter?
Right.
Wow. This proved that does matter,
Yeah,
so
I wonder, I would love for some study to be done. I'm not even sure how easy this would be to research, but I would love to know how many pharmaceutical medications and at what levels the average person is consuming that they don't even think they are. Like you and I, for example, now we eat very clean diets and we're really careful about this kind of stuff, but like we're both on zero medications. I don't take any, you don't take any. But I wonder like how many we incidentally take in from like contaminated waters, contaminated foods.
It's a good question. Like yeah.
I'd be very curious. I don't know if that's something that could be measured or studied, but it's just something that I ponder,
That's interesting. The first thing that comes to mind with that is like Roundup, glyphosate.
Exactly. That's
so like Dr. Zach Bush says that it's in 70% of the air. I don't consume foods with that, but I breathe air.
Exactly.
And they sprayed the field across the street like 3 days ago. Yep. So like, where is that? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So how much glyphosate is running through my system?
Right.
Even though I'm quote unquote organic.
Yep. And so glyphosate isn't a pharmaceutical, obviously, but they have done that kind of research to show, that the average American consumes so much of these various chemicals that we add to the environment through whether it's farming practices or, waste management practices, or however these chemicals get into our environment. And it is alarming how many chemicals that we don't think we consume actually do make it into our body. And so I just have the same question regarding pharmaceuticals. I'd be very curious about that, if that could be estimated.
I'm sure there's blood work for that, or there's some kind of,
it'd be very specialized.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That'd be scary maybe.
And I guess as far as, if people are wondering like what the effect this has on the fish who are swimming in these medications and just, taking them in all day long. I think I saw stuff about how it shortens a lot of their lifespans. That was shown significantly. It messes with their development, so a lot of them are not growing to full size.
Yes.
There's a really big problem with a lot of like birth control medications getting into the oceans, and that's causing a lot of fish to become intersex. Where they're finding, I read this in another article, where they're finding like male fish, and then when they cut them open and dissect them, they find eggs inside.
No shit.
So that they have both sperm and eggs, which is not supposed to be the case.
Oh, wow.
So like some of these fish are actually like ending up as like intersex, biologically. It's changing their behavior patterns massively. And that's mostly from like the antidepressant type stuff.
Yes.
But some of them are becoming, they're not caring for their young anymore. They're behaving more aggressively, or they're not seeking out food the way they normally would. So it's totally changing all their behavior patterns.
Yes. This article referenced that right there.
Okay. Yeah.
It said that the crayfish's exposure to antidepressants has been linked to altered behavior, increasing their boldness and the time they spent foraging, potentially making them more vulnerable to predators. And then it said there's a bonefish study done in Sweden that found Sweden University's wild perch were less fearful and more antisocial when exposed to anti-anxiety medications, which could affect feeding and breeding, right? So we're like, not only are we making these individual fish sick, we're altering these huge, important reproduction cycles, which, like they said in the initial study, 50% decrease in population in bonefish already. Like there are fishermen down there that fish for these, and they're saying we don't see them anymore.
And we used to catch tons of them every year.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a huge concern.
And it's a reminder to people too, like even if you don't care about, let's say, a certain species of fish, you're like, bonefish and crayfish, I don't care, or whatever, Swedish perch, I don't care. Everything is interconnected, and like all of these animals are prey for some other animal that you do care about.
For sure.
I mean, who knows how it's affecting, say, the dolphin population when half of their food source is now gone, or whatever. Like it affects everything.
Yes. Joel Salatin had a quote, you are what you eat eats.
Yeah.
So you're eating fish that's eating antidepressants,
Right.
you're at some level it's passing through,
Yeah.
right? How much we don't know, but definitely is, right? They're also saying like the hormones in meat and milk, right, are the reason kids are hitting puberty younger, and this and that.
That's well studied.
That's well studied.
Yep.
But that's a great example of how that correlates to this, and it scares the shit out of me, and it pisses me off just because I love fish.
I know, me too.
And there's so many health benefits to fish. It tastes so good. There's so many varieties. But like,
seafood is one of my favorite. Out of all types of food, seafood is my favorite.
Me too. I could be a pescatarian. I could just eat fish 3 times a day. Yeah. But like, I'm limited to wild Alaskan salmon, and most of that's coming from a can only because of affordability, right? It's still $10 a pound,
right?
But like fresh salmon's upwards of $15 to $27 a pound.
Yeah, especially with the food prices now, everything's going up. So
exactly. So yeah, it's like, man, where do we start with this? But I don't know. I think it's important, especially if you're consuming a lot of fish, your kids are. And it says right now, there's no legal limits that exist for the control of pollution from pharmaceuticals during manufacture, use, nor disposal. So there's no policies in place. So it's sort of like the Wild West with this, and it's showing.
It's very unregulated as far as what they can. Like I said, they haven't even considered the fact that these pharmaceuticals might have an effect. There's obviously regulations as far as like, I don't know, dumping oil in the ocean. We understand the effects of that. Like there's certain pollution type regulations in place, but no one ever considered pharmaceuticals. Right now, they can just dump whatever they want to. And I'll say from like an individual standpoint for people listening, flushing medications down the toilet or down your sink, that is a really big problem. A lot of people do that.
Okay.
And that's something that's contributing a lot to this problem.
What's interesting is, let's say they don't, right? They do. Many people, many do. But they don't
change and they stop doing that. Yeah.
Well, let's say they take it to where they're supposed to. Where's it going?
Yeah, right.
Right. Because it just said there's no legal limits that exist.
It's probably being dumped in equally hazardous.
Exactly. There's an effect to that. So I don't know. I think if there's a 50,000 foot view on all of this, like obviously be very careful with the fish you're eating and the amounts, but let's get America healthier.
Yeah, I think that's the number one thing that we want to take away. And this is the first thing we both said when we saw this article is the main problem is that we consume all these pharmaceuticals. I'd like to live in a pharmaceutical free world where people don't need them, which means a healthy world. Like this is one of those classic examples of identifying a problem, but not focusing on the root causes. They're trying to put a Band-Aid on the problem.
Totally.
When the real root cause is just poor health.
Totally.
In America and around the world. And that's the thing that I want people that I want to be fixed in the world.
And you're chasing these solutions that they're proposing, they're chasing something that won't ever be caught, because let's say it takes 10 years to turn the infrastructure around. But in those 10 years, we don't address true human health. And now we're not taking 12 on average, we're taking 24 on average, and we're 97% obese, right? And on and on. Now what the infrastructure is to handle the 12, right, is outdated. And the pharmaceuticals got stronger. Dosages went up, right?
New ones were created.
New ones are created, exactly. And one thing a lot of people may not understand is, like, we have a septic system, 2 of them here at the house and the gym. There's living bacteria, like in our guts, in septic systems, that to have an effective septic system that works correctly, it needs normal pee and poop and food and different things to go in it, so the bacteria can eat itself and it can disperse properly, right, and break down. That's why you generally don't put bleach down, you're in your septic. There's different things you shouldn't be doing.
It'll kill the quote unquote microbiome of the septic system.
Correct. And so these wastewater systems, I know, are not designed, like we said before, to be handling all these drugs, but there's no good bacteria in them breaking things down the way that it should be, right? Because we are essentially pissing and shitting drugs.
Yeah.
Literally.
People don't respect the importance of bacteria and how they are very similar to fungi, like kind of like a filtration and renewal system of the planet, you know? And we do so much that destroys the microbiome of various systems to our detriment.
For sure.
And we usually don't figure it out until like 20 or 50 years later.
For sure. And I want to provide another example that goes along with what you just said is like, let's take, for example, like we have some farmland now and we might put cows on it next year. The only interest right now in putting cows on that land is to regenerate the land through them eating the grass and then pooping and fertilizing the grass. But then if you but these are 100% grass-fed organic cows doing that job, and we're using them almost as like natural fertilizers to regenerate unhealthy land into healthy land. So that's the good side. The bad side is, let's take conventional pork, whose sewage you can't transport across state lines anymore because it's illegal. It's an illegal substance. You can't take North Carolina pig shit and ship it to a different state to get rid of and spread on fields because it's illegal. It's so toxic with drugs that it has to stay within the state lines. So I wouldn't want that on my fields. You see that? So those are the dichotomies of like healthy human A, grass-fed cow, healthy human or unhealthy human B, you know, conventional pork, right? And I don't know. I think that sort of goes along with this.
Yeah,
pretty good.
I like the focus you have on regenerating that land in a natural way. Nature does a really good job of regenerating land and organisms and stuff like that on its own. That's what it's designed to do. That's for sure. That's how nature has survived for 3 billion years. It's this constant cycle of renewal and cleansing and so on. We got to stop getting in the way of it, whether it's like within our own bodies or within our environment. People have got to start to respect that more. And I'm glad that that's an emerging science and it's being talked about a little bit more. But the sad thing is that it really is not in the interest of most of the corporations and industries that we currently have. You know, it's to go in that direction is going to cut into their bottom line quite a bit, which is why there's not a lot of focus on doing the right thing right now. And
healing naturally, whether it's land, oceans, bodies, takes time. So this is on topic, but it's slightly off. But like I met with a handful of farmers with this particular piece of land, and almost all of them said, let's spray it, kill it, till it, and replant it, right? So chemicals, till it, you know, killing the anaerobic system in the soil, and then plant it and just start over. And all this can happen within a few weeks. I'm looking at doing this the natural way, like you said, because land and our bodies and oceans want to heal naturally. This is a 2 to 3 year turnaround. So making much less money on hay sales and it's all just less, but we get more in the end. Because it's done the right way. And I'm hopeful the oceans can heal. They can.
They all can. All of nature can heal as long as we stop getting in its way.
Yes, and better septic systems will put a Band-Aid on it. But I think we need to, you know, reduce the drugs.
Root cause.
And then the fish can get back to finding their mates and having fun. So cool. All right. Well, that was it for today. Hopefully this informed people, you know.
That was great. I think this is a really good topic to bring to people's attention. You know, it's just one of those things one of those aspects of health and wellness, and just the health and wellness of the earth, as you know, as well as all the species, including us, that people just don't consider very often. And it's nice to have these reminders and get the discussion going.
For sure. And so this is part of that awareness, and we thank everyone for the support. We're signing off, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
I want to take a moment and thank our show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Suttmeyer Law Firm, and NativePath Supplements. These are companies we personally use and trust. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic or Suttmeyer Law Firm. And not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15. That's COMO 15 at checkout when shopping at NativePath.com and receive 15% off all of your orders. Your support to our show sponsors assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope you all enjoy.